Going off.
There we go. Record to the cloud. Hot dog. All right.
Okay.
So I'm going to share screen real quick just to fill you guys in on just some of the upcoming events.
Wait, no, you're not.
No, I'm not. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're not.
Karen, yeah, I forgot. You just steer the ship, my friend.
Okay, I have not had an opportunity to say welcome, everyone, to the Fall 2022 Virtual Operations and Supply Chain Management Student Night. I'm your moderator, Karen Vizda. I am here to tell you that supply chain touches everyone, so you're in the right place. I worked at the Manning School of Business at the University of Massachusetts in Lowell as a senior adjunct faculty member, and I'm currently on the ASCM Minuteman Board of Directors. I'm the Activities Director and Liaison for the universities. This is a joint meeting, and what I would like to do is get my slides up and running. Can everyone see this?
Yep.
All right, so I wanted to welcome you, and now I want to recognize the fact that this is a joint meeting between ASCM Massachusetts Minuteman, Northern New England and New Haven chapters, as well as the American Society for Quality, the ASQ New Haven chapter. Whoop. There are 4 different companies being represented this evening: Excelis Technologies, Digital AI, Sikorsky / Lockheed Martin, and Nova Nordisk. And the schools that are being represented are incredible. We have Bryant University this evening, Boston University, Merrimack College, Northeastern University, Quinnipiac University, Southern New Hampshire University, University of Massachusetts Boston, and University of Massachusetts Lowell, as well as many more as you're coming in, and I haven't even been able to capture you all yet. But we want to welcome you all and thank you all in advance for attending our semi-annual student night this evening. We will be having another opportunity to meet with you in about 6 months from now, in the spring. So we're looking forward to connecting with as many students as possible face-to-face this evening. And to get credit for attending, especially if you're being given extra credit by one of your professors for this networking meeting, you must have your screen turned on and you must participate in the Q&As. There'll be a Q&A after each of our 4 speakers this evening. There will be 2 $25 Amazon gift cards that will be given away this evening for those who both participate and stay until the end of the meeting. So you need to show your face, participate, stay till the end of the meeting, and your names will be put in a raffle, and we will choose who gets the 2 $25 Amazon gift cards. All right. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our chapter president, Ken Glasser, to welcome you, introduce our fellow collaborating chapter presidents, and address all our participating professors. Ken, you're on.
Welcome. Hello, everybody. Glad to be here. I would like to let you know that we have a bunch of joint programs coming up, and I'm going to share screen with you right now. Can everyone see the calendar?
Yep.
Okay. So we do all of our joint meetings with the other chapters that work with us. So I'm ASCM Massachusetts Minuteman. We also work with the New Haven chapter, who I'll introduce in a second, the Northern New England chapter, Western Mass, and the ASQ New Haven chapters. And everything is joint. It's all virtual. It's all free. So please attend all of these. Coming up on November 9, we have corporate espionage and how to protect your company tools in the 21st century. Art Harvey, CPIM, CPM. He's also ex-CIA, but he won't And for that reason, he won't share his picture. You can't take his picture. It's a really great presentation. So that's coming up. We'll have that up online to register soon. December, we have supply chain holiday trivia, fun facts in supply chain planning and logistics. Olivia Atkin, the president of the ASCM New Haven chapter, is going to moderate and lead that one. It's going to be a lot of fun. You'll love it. January 11, the roaring 2020s in supply chain management, 3 trends that will challenge the supply chain in the coming decades. Gary Smith, he's the chief supply chain officer at MTA New York City Transit. So you'll love that. That's a TBD. February, we have our next student night. This one is focused on the types of positions and jobs within a career. That one will be more focused on recruiting, getting a job, resumes, and things like that. So you want to come to the February one. That's our next student night. It'll be virtual, just like this. In March, S&OP secrets that only NASA can teach you. And Alan Dunn is the past chairman of Apex International. So that's going to be really a good presentation. He just presented at the New England Supply Chain Conference, and he's very fun to listen to. He's a very good speaker. So you'll love that. And then the last one to tell you about here is in May, analyzing virtual plant tours and lessons learned, moderated by Olivia Atkin. And I think we're going to look at some plant tours video wise, and then we're going to sort of walk through and analyze what we saw, what we thought, what was good, what was bad about the supply chain that we saw within those videos. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So that's what's going on with our programs. Next, I would like to introduce, now Olivia is not on, right, Pervez?
I don't think, can you check if she's on, or she said that
I don't see her yet. So I'm going to introduce you, Mr. Pervez, past president at New Haven, chapter ASCM Apex, and tell us what you'd like to tell about New Haven.
Well, that's, we do, as you said, we do joint PDMs and same schedule. We have, it's working on real good, great lot of attendance. And we have some educational activities going on, but I don't have much detail about that. So if Olivia, she said that she will join it late.
Yeah.
Soon. And so if there is anything, maybe we can have her do an update onto that.
Sure. That sounds great. That sounds great. All right, good. And let's see, is Paul Moriarty on the line from Northern New England, or Dave Turbide? They are not. There's the people that help us put these together is also the Northern New England chapter. So, but he's not online, so that's okay. No problem. John Janis from Western Mass. And I think and then Larry Spinello, of course, from ASQ. He's not Apex, he's ASQ. Larry, would you like to say a quick hello, my friend?
Oh, hello. I just, our schedule is going to be parallel on most of ASCM. And then I just want to announce that on November 7th, 8th, and 9th, there's going to be a special Boston, like, you know, how you have the New England conference that's going on?
Yes.
Did that happen already? I didn't get the dates on those.
Yes, that was Monday the 3rd.
All right, we're going to be doing another one in November for Boston. It's going to be in Boston area. ASQ is going to be doing that. I've been sending out some stuff in ASQ emails and all that. It ought to be interesting. I'm thinking about trying to see if I can attend. I got to get some time off though.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, everything seems to be going swell, and it's interesting season so far. I know that last meeting we had with Dr. Mark Chuckingham, I keep reading it over and over, his stuff. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, the New World Order. It was great.
It's
the last presentation.
And everybody should try to see if you can get all of whatever he has and just.
Yep. By the way, if people are looking for our past presentations, it is on our website. I can quickly ASCM. We're actually a little bit ahead of schedule. ASCM, Massachusetts Minuteman. I'll quickly show you where we keep our presentations. I have to share again. Okay, share screen. There you go. So here's our website right here, Massachusetts Minuteman site. So if you go to chapter events, here's all our meetings and classes. Here's our calendar, and here's our past presentations. And you can see the Mark 1 is up, Neeraj before that, and there are a bunch of great things you can check out if you missed a particular meeting. They're all here, either recorded or both with the PPT. So that is awesome. So there you go. So thank you so much, Larry. I appreciate it. And Karen, did you want to introduce Emily?
Yes, you have all the presidents covered there.
Yeah, I all the ones that are here. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Now I'd like to introduce Emily Zhang. She's the director of our E&R, our Education and Research for ASCM Massachusetts Minuteman, and she will share what our offerings are in education and research.
Hi, everybody. Great to be here, and thank you, Karen and Ken. You're always great at putting out these events and getting students engaged. I am the director of education, one of the directors of education, and we have a lot of online classes, virtual CSCP, CPIM, and CLTD certification courses. I'm an instructor, but I am mostly involved in kind of setting up the classes. And I also got my CSCP some years ago. And it's all up virtual. We have a great instructor. It's after hours, 6 p.m. typically on weeknights, once a week. And our instructor is usually Chris Maloof, and he is excellent. So I encourage you to take a look at our website. We typically run at least one CSCP class in fall and spring, depending on attendance, as well as the CPIM 1 and 2 classes. So I'm sure you'll get my email. Maybe it'll be sent out after this, or you can always contact, there's an email for education for the Minuteman chapter. You can let me know. We also help get kind of discounts on certification packages if you want to go at your own pace, exam credits if you've already studied and are ready to take the exam. We really are ready to support you and work with you if you want to get certified. And it's always great, especially if you're looking to kind of break into the field. It is a recognized credential. So I think that's all I've got. Basically, check the website. There are classes happening. There will be classes for next spring coming up. And then in the meantime, there are online learning modules that are available anytime you want to sign up. I believe you can buy them straight from the store online site as well. So
yeah, I would say that I just put up on the screen our website. So if you go to the homepage and click classes, that'll take you to what class. Right now we don't have any. We're in the middle of classes, so you can't sign up for those. So our new classes will be coming again probably in January, Emily.
Yeah, usually like January, February. Mm-hmm. So also I hope you'll be added to our newsletter, or if you are registered with the chapter in any way, you'll always get an email about upcoming events and upcoming registration for the classes. So
I love it. I love it. So I would say one more thing that,
Yes.
certifications mean so much. When I went looking for a job back in the year 2000, a long time ago, having the letters after your name, those are the ones that get separated on the top of the pile at the resumes. So, just having the certification is amazing. It is absolutely amazing. Oops, Emily, I think something just happened and you got muted by accident. But yeah, it's I had 5 offers when I went looking. I had CPIM and CPM, and it does not hurt to have the letters after your name. It's like a CPA in accounting. So there you go.
Yeah.
So if you go to our homepage, just click the green classes and it'll take you right to here, and that'll tell you what's coming when it's coming. So
Yep.
there you go. Thank you, Emily. Back to
No
Karen.
problem. Oh, and sorry, just one last note. If you are employed already, probably your employer would pay for your classes. So just something to note.
And sometimes we have classes at the companies. You know,
Cool.
if there were enough people that wanted to have a class at a particular company, we can set those up during hours, after hours.
Yep.
So that's pretty neat. Yeah,
Mhm.
awesome. And Emily and Chris do a great job keeping things rolling over there. So appreciate it, Emily.
No problem. Sorry, Karen. Go ahead.
No, that's perfectly fine. In fact, I was going to say, if there's nothing else in the area of ENR and programs, we'll move on to the main part of our program a little early this evening. So maybe we'll be able to take an extra minute or two per person. And we have 5 guest speakers this evening. They will talk for 10 minutes each, and then we will have a 4 or 5 minute Q&A. So I do need to see your faces. I am already starting my list of names who are showing their faces and participating for your professors as well as for that raffle. So give our guest speakers, please, an audience and show your shining faces. We have actually had in the past at our student events, we have had students who have made such an impression on our active members that they've gotten jobs just from showing up tonight, showing their faces, participating, asking questions, staying until the end, and made such an impression that people were willing, when they reached out to myself or Ken or to the organization, people were willing to step up and say, we would consider an internship for that student. So please, if you have any wherewithal this evening to show your faces and participate, there's a lot at stake in it for you. So welcome to all of you again. And let's start at the top with our
Karen,
guest speaker.
one
Katie?
quick thing. I just want to let everybody know the survey and the CE. I'm going to send a link out towards the end of the whole thing for a survey to fill out as well as a CEU certificate. So you need to hang on and watch a lot of this to get your certificate of attendance. But you'll get that link at the end. All right, go ahead, Karen.
Absolutely. Okay. First up, we're going to find out all about these different roles in the supply chain profession. We have Katie Wright, Director of Logistics at Excelis Technologies. Welcome, Katie.
Hi, I hope you guys can hear me okay.
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. I didn't know I was up first. Thanks, Ken. Way to go. Give me a little bit of pressure. I did prepare a slide deck for you guys, and I don't know if you have it or you want me to just share, or what do you think?
You can share. Yeah, I'm going to let the presenters each do their own deck and scroll at your own
Wonderful.
leisure. If it doesn't work, I'm
Okay.
happy to do it though.
All right, well, let's give me a shot here.
By the way, while she's getting that up, I work with Katie and she is so fun to work with, super smart and super fun at the same time. You don't always see that. So
Well, thank you. Bless you. All right, let's see. I gotta do the display swap, I think here, right? So, were you guys seeing it correctly?
Yep.
Yes.
You are.
See it? You can run the slideshow too if you'd like.
Okay, but so you guys you're not seeing the next slide section, or you are?
We are seeing the next slide section on the left.
How's that?
That's
Perfect.
Okay, well, welcome everybody. I am Katie Wright. I am the Director of Logistics at Excelis Technologies. I have been here for about 2 years, joined during the pandemic, which was a lot of fun and a big challenge because you have to learn a lot to be in logistics and trade compliance. So, for me, I just put some kind of hokey things together, but for me, a career in global logistics is more than just pushing brown boxes around the world, right? A lot of people think there's like magic in transportation and shipping, that Katie just pulls out her magic carpet, gets something from point A to point B. All of the things happen and we recognize revenue and everybody's happy at the end of the quarter. And there's a lot more to it. So if you asked me what I do, my organization works with vendors, customers, and intercompany partners to ensure seamless movement of goods and trade data, right? There's all kinds of things that have to go between countries and origins and destinations, shippers and importers and exporters across the globe. And it's my job to support the customer experience by physically delivering goods on time and in the right condition while ensuring compliance with international regs. I guess a little bit about me and how I got here. All of y'all who are in a supply chain college track are way ahead of me. I have a BA in English, so it was not a thing to study at supply chain back when I went to school. You can tell how old I am. And right out of school, I started in a trade compliance temp position at a semiconductor firm, learning about export and import compliance and working under a logistics director back then. After cutting my teeth there, I learned a lot about export and then got really frustrated that our company didn't know a lot about import. So I actually took a course and became a licensed customs broker. That requires an exam, kind of like the bar, where you kind of assert your knowledge of US customs import law, and typically has a pretty low, like 3 to 5% pass rate nationwide. After we did that, I moved on to distribution and logistics. I was a subject matter expert in our ERP system. And so what that did was we had an ERP conversion. We went from Oracle to SAP for an ERP system. And as a subject matter expert, I got slotted right into physically being on site at a third-party logistics warehouse, making sure they didn't screw anything up for months. So I learned a lot there. Subsequent to that, I joined a medical device company, continued to own aspects of both trade compliance, that import and export stuff, as well as I covered distribution for the Americas. So by then I had figured out how to manage people, or so somebody thought. And I had responsibilities for shipping, receiving, distribution planning, export and import. So I also got some interesting experience with medical device and cold chain. Wasn't really planning to learn that, but cold chain and temperature monitoring systems came into my wheelhouse as well. I was responsible for $15 million in freight spend, which comes with carrier negotiation, freight pay and audit, duty, etc. And on occasion, I get the PATS tickets in the box with FedEx. So there you go. As I said, I joined Axcelis 2 years ago. I have responsibility for freight and trade compliance. That involves export licensing, duty drawback, shipping, logistics, carrier negotiation, and working with a whole bunch of different organizations across the company. The structure, so for me, where do I sit? I report to the Senior Vice President of Operations with dotted line reporting to our Chief Legal General Counsel due to my trade compliance responsibilities. And if you guys have been paying attention in the news, we've had some very interesting regulatory changes related to semiconductors and exporting to China. So I've been talking to her a lot this week. The operations team at Axcelis is supply chain, sourcing, planning, manufacturing, and logistics, a whole bunch of different subject matter experts in disparate areas of the organization. But it's obviously a very large organization encompassing manufacturing, which is, hundreds and hundreds of people. My particular organization, I have shipping, import, export, and logistics analysts. I also have an intern, and he's pretty awesome, helping teach us old dogs new tricks by helping us to do some cool stuff. If you ask me what I do a day in my life, I dabble in a lot of different areas. So my kind of cool thing about logistics is if you're a little like ADD, you get to spend time in both tactical execution and strategic planning. So I might start on some highly visible drop shipment in the morning where Jason and I will be calling each other and going, okay, how are we going to do this? You'll talk to him soon. I'll sit on an industry call about export control, something over lunch. And then I'll be on the phone with our Korean colleagues in the evening their time morning talking about how we're going to migrate some of our Asian suppliers to utilize ocean shipping to save freight costs in the future. I work with finance, engineering, HR, all kinds of, we touch a lot of different areas of the organization. Negotiation is part of what I do. You'll hear that Ken will sometimes call me because somebody's got some crazy, some language in a contract, or we'll talk about Incoterms and what's favorable for us in a particular negotiation. And I spend a lot of time learning and reading, right? This week I've been thumbing through 140 pages of US export regulatory adjustments. But you have to pay attention to what's going on in the world, right? COVID closures, strikes, different market conditions, even weather. You know, if you had a lot of stuff going on to Florida in the past couple of weeks, you need to know what's going on with Hurricane Ian, where you could send stuff, where you couldn't send stuff, and what your trade partners or transportation partners are doing with that. I think it's important to network. You learn a lot from other people. I have a lot of colleagues that I reach out to because, you know, as a logistician, somebody's probably already solved a problem that I'm coming up for the first time with. Leveraging technology, there are always new ways to do something that you've never seen before. And I highly recommend joining trade associations. So I'm a member of ICPA, which is the International Compliance Professionals Association, Connect, which is the Coalition of New England Companies for Trade, and CSCMP, of course, the Council of Supply Chain Management Professionals. If you were thinking about getting started in logistics, what kind of advice would I give you? Internships, they're really great. I had the opportunity at Waters, my previous employer. I had 3 years of the MIT Sloan School interns that were getting their master's in supply chain, and they did some really cool projects together. They looked at robots, whether I could use robots versus material handlers in my warehouse. It didn't come out favorable, but it was a cool project. We did an exercise where they heat mapped my inventory to make sure that we were moving product closer to the door if it was picked more often. We looked at options for using RFID on some really fast moving bulk products to see if we could like pull a skid through a gate and identify everything that was in there. You know, I had dreams about cycle counting using drones, some guy that just stands there and counts everything just by flying a little toy. And we executed a case study for Box on Demand, where we looked at whether it was a better opportunity for us to save freight dollars, time, and packaging costs by utilizing something like that. As I said, I have an intern today. He is a computer science major, so not a straight up logistics geek, but he's working to use technology to streamline our existing processes. Right now, he is working to help my import analyst execute duty drawback claims faster and better. I think this was something that you guys brought up in the very beginning. Karen actually mentioned it, so from supply chain perspective, but it's true for logistics. Logistics has never been more visible or important in a global manufacturing organization. We have always been here plugging away, picking things up, putting things down, and getting things across borders. But due to freight costs and all of the challenges in the world of supply chain, we really do have a seat at the table. If you're thinking about logistics and you're a little bit concerned, my best advice is to just jump in. Start anywhere you can. I started as a temp, and through tenacity, some intellectual curiosity, and just working hard, I moved through the ranks. And I recommend it for anybody that's considering it. And that's it. Did I hit my 10 minutes? 9:55. Look at that. All right, I'm good.
Thank you, Katie. Now, who has questions for Katie?
I had one. I was wondering how difficult you found it to work in an area outside of what you studied in college.
So I used to tell people that I write emails in English every day, right? Basically, all that does is get you a seat at the table in order to interview. The skills that you amass in all kinds of different areas, whether it is someone like me, I was highly involved in college in both a sorority and some other personal, like other clubs and organizations. And just the way that you prepare yourself means that you could totally step into an entry role in logistics, no matter what your major. And, you know, you just gotta work hard, take it all in and prove it, and you can really move up. Yeah,
Thank you.
sure.
I guess I have
Whether
a
a lot of
question.
you students know or not, a lot of our old timers never heard of a concentration called supply chain and operations.
Right.
And they majored in many, many, many different things and walked into manufacturing companies or otherwise and got those jobs and have raised in the ranks. So
Yeah,
you are ahead of the game having some background walking in the door.
for sure.
I do have a quick question. That's all right.
Sure.
You did mention something about, I think, knowledge of like ERP systems like
Yes.
Oracle. And so is that good to, I mean, I would assume so, good to have on a resume, you know, a lot of different ERPs like SAP and Sage and NetSuite and
I never say no to that, right? Fun fact, the job market's a little crazy in logistics and shipping and all those things. So I interview a lot of people. You know, I don't think that one particular ERP experience is most important. Mostly, I think that if you figured one out, you can figure out how to dive into the details of what should be there and understand those relationships, right? You know that there's a PO and that ties to a sales order and it goes to a pack list and it goes to an invoice and you can kind of do that whole trace. And if you know it's in there, I think any ERP experience is a good ERP experience.
okay, great. Thank you for that.
Sure.
Actually, I have one question. Like, as you mentioned, like you you are involved in sometimes supply of cross borders through oceans. So
Absolutely.
sometimes like there are some unavoidable emergency situations going on in the ocean. How do you deal with that? Specifically being over here and dealing with all those things.
There is a lot going on with ocean. It's a really good question. So things are coming down a little bit on the front, but you know, certainly we have gone from what I would call just-in-time inventory to a totally different practice, right? So like that was beaten into my head as when I first joined the workforce. It was just-in-time inventory is really important. Now it's like not just in case inventory, but it's getting there, right? That you need to have that extra inventory. So when you're going into ocean, having that buffer based on your full transit time and potentially being able to float some additional inventory is always critical. And then having eyes wide open what the air freight costs are going to have to be if you need to pick that up and put it on an airplane, right? I spent a lot of time talking with our procurement team, thinking about what might be the case, you know, worst case scenario, Katie, how many weeks are we talking and how much is it going to cost me to air freight this? And so you have to plan for that. You have to understand, and you got to stay in tune to what's going on, maybe with the ILW, right? Because you've got potentially like a strike going on in Los Angeles and you're thinking, oh God, do I need to go East Coast or am I going to make it? And so you have those dialogues and you have those decisions as early as you can, but know that you always have to have that fallback. And I am not one of those people that likes to put all my inventory in one basket. So I like to have a little bit of buffer just in case.
Or like if a massive cargo ship blocks the Suez Canal.
Maybe that happened. Maybe that happened. We did not have anything on that ship, but we did get a couple of weeks delay for having inventory just hanging out, waiting for that to clear.
Yeah. Thank
You guys
you.
bring up a great point, though. It really, the geopolitical climate, the things of, you know, strikes or just thinking about what's going on in Russia and the Ukraine, right? Airplanes having to take longer flights because they can't go over Russian airspace, and what that does to your transportation costs or maybe your transit time or your flight availability options.
We may mention of just in time and now almost like just in case. I start thinking for the last year or so, we've been having the problems with inflation and all that good stuff. And there was a great problems of getting stuff from the shore to to the shelves. And is there consensus almost to the point that, hey, maybe we should just slow down just in time, just get as much stuff we can get on the shelf so we make sure we don't know if it's gonna come. You know, I'm just wondering if are people thinking that now? It seems like a big problem. I think, you know.
I think inflation, where we're at now is that at least what we're hearing from our transportation partners is that inflation has slowed down purchasing, which is enabling the ocean market to level off. But make no mistake, carriers that have been making a lot of money for the last couple of years are not going to be cool with just making no profit. So we're going to see like a balancing between going back to what it used to be and blank sailings until they're happy making money. And that hopefully will level off. We still have massive container imbalances where there's a bunch of equipment that's just been stranded in the California areas and things like that. So that'll have to level out. And as somebody reminded me the other day, you know, inflation might have fixed the demand problem, but it didn't necessarily fix our infrastructure challenges that we have as a country, right? We don't all of a sudden have more truck drivers. We don't all of a sudden have more chassis or better availability on the lift. Oh, I see a question from Lexi.
And I'm going to have to cut Lexi off. I'm terribly sorry. But I would encourage you to stay to the end because you'll have a chance to ask all of our speakers questions again at the end. So if you think of anything, write it down. Write that down, Lexi, unless it's quick.
I do get to travel a lot. It's quick. I can travel a lot. It's a good perk.
Oh, was that the question?
That was the question. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. At this point, I would like to introduce, thank you very much, Katie. Thank you so, so much. And I hope you can stay with us till the end of the program in case anybody has any further questions. And that was logistics. Now we're going to cover the career of finance in supply chain with Mahati Mukamala. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, close enough.
All right. He's a senior director of financial planning and analysis at Digital AI. Is that how people refer to your company, Digital AI?
Yeah, Digital AI, yep.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome, and we look forward to hearing what you have to share.
Yeah, thank you. Well, that's a tough act to follow there. Should have went first, I guess. All right. So, okay, I'll do it slightly differently, right? And mine has nothing contained in any sense, but, you know, I borrowed the first slide.
Are you sharing a screen? Because I'm not seeing it.
Yeah, it went to a black screen, so you just want to try it again.
Oh, weird. Okay, 1 second. I might.
Could be a different monitor. You probably have a ton of monitors.
No, it's staying.
Yeah, if you want, I can present from here. If you need.
All right. Hold on.
No problem.
Again. Yeah, I got.
In the old days, they'd call it technical difficulties.
How about now? Can you guys see my screen now?
Oh,
Yes.
Just came through.
Perfect. So as I was saying,
Excuse me, hate to interrupt you again, but would you like to run that slideshow?
oh, sure.
There you go.
Perfect. So
Thank
I
you.
borrowed the first slide from Katie, thankfully, or Ken, I guess. So I appreciate for it. There'll be a bunch of pictures and a little quiz at the end. I want to see how many people can recognize characters or people or whoever that's going to come next. But a couple of quick things, right, before we get started. Finance is a very, very broad subject, right? So, you know, finance could mean 100 different things, right? So that's sort of the first thing I wanted to talk through, right? So what are finance careers? Well, they're a bunch, right? You could do, I mean, almost anything that has to do with a number and a calculator somehow gets grouped into a finance organization, right? And it's a bunch of different tracks, right? So as you graduate your undergrad courses, and I don't know if we have any graduate school folks here, but if you're thinking about grad school, how you really want to approach it is trying to think of what sort of finance track do you want to be in, right? Because not all of finance is buying low and selling high, right? Which is a trope that you hear a lot. And I'm going to bring up the buy low, sell high a few times because I personally hate that phrase. And just so I drive that in by the time we're done with this presentation, right? And then there's, different career trajectories for each of the different tracks you pick, right? So if you work at JP Morgan, and you might be talking to a buddy of yours that's third year at JP Morgan and he has a VP title, and you might be talking to someone that's at Goldman and he's fifth year in, sixth year in, and he's a senior analyst or so on and so forth. So titles also get a bit or discombobulated in different tracks of finance, right? So let's get into a couple of the tracks. First one is the one that I think most people are familiar with, right, is investment banker. And again, I bring this phrase up, just my word of advice, try not to hang around with people that say buy low, sell high a lot. They're selling you a Ponzi scheme. Because it's never that easy, right? That's the first thing I remember from grad school. First textbook was that, basically saying, hey, if people could predict finance, they'd be billionaires. But getting back to the track idea, right? So there's investment banking. Investment banking, I'm giving away a little bit of who this person in the picture is, but for those who don't know, it's from the popular show Billions, right? Bobby Axelrod. And his character is based on real life hedge fund manager Steve Cohen, who now owns the Mets, aptly so, who just got kicked out of the playoffs. But investment banking, basically the idea there is you raise money from people and you go and invest their money across multiple different things. And instead of it being something like, let me take your $100 and put it into a Google stock, it'll be basically a fund. You raise a fund, and then you go deploy that fund into a bunch of different things. So you could raise a fund for $1 billion, $2 billion, $100 million, and then you allocate that group of money into different things, right? And the idea of an iBanker is they typically try to return you a lot higher than what you would get if you tried to do it on your own. And for that, you pay a fee, right? So they make you money and they take a bigger portion of the money they make you versus you making that money yourself and keeping it, right? Beyond platform fees and so on and so forth. The next thing, portfolio manager, this is, if you've ever watched old school finance movies, this is basically your Gordon Gekko, right? Greed is good. Typical, you work in a firm, big firms like Merrill Lynch, back in the day, Morgan Stanley, and you're essentially overlooking either a retail investment or a portfolio investment, and you're basically managing that person's trajectory, right? So you're more of the person that works with a personal client over a long-term retirement strategy, and you're pretty good with a specific type of security. So you're either really good at stocks, you're either really good at bonds, you're really good at crypto and blockchain and all that nonsense, so on and so forth, right? But you have an expertise, and you're, if you're good, you're the expert in that particular subject. And those are the guys that generally come on CNBC and give you the 17 panel opinion on whatever's happening next, right? Third, and this is probably your buddy who's now trading, on Robinhood, saying, hey, I got it, I figured it out. Finance is easy, right? Dave Portnoy, and I love this meme, because in the height of the craziness, Dave Portnoy went on CNBC and said, yeah, Warren Buffett, he's old, he's overhyped, right? And this is sort of the conversations that, back in the heyday, and Mark Cuban once said this properly, everybody's a genius in a bull market, right? So a securities trader is basically someone that, puts in the actual trade, makes money. Hopefully he's buying at the right time. Hopefully he's getting out at the right time. Hopefully they have information, blah, blah, blah. Again, buy low, sell high, terrible phrase. And then you have the financial analyst track, right? And this is basically you're working inside of a company, whether that company is a software company, a supply chain company, or whatever it is. You're working inside the company and you're essentially in charge of all things numbers, right? So you start off with maybe a portion of finance, and then eventually you own the entire finance playbook, right? So you are in charge of every single dollar that is going to come into the company, and you're in charge of every single dollar that's going to go out of the company, and you better have a good story on what each of those things are grouped around, right? Why are you getting money? Are you getting as much money as you could? Why are you spending money? Are you spending as little as you can, right? Just a lot of storytelling. Quick question, so let's make it a slightly interactive. So I told you who this was, right? Does anybody know who that lady is? Or Charlie Sheen's character, what movie that's from?
Wall Street.
There you go. There you go. That's Charlie Sheen's character from Wall Street. Well played.
And she looks so familiar.
All right. Let's give it 5 more seconds. Anybody? So that's Indra Nooyi, and she is the CEO of Pepsi. And she was a CFO that became a CEO. So after, let's say 2008 and 9, usually typically what used to happen is your sales guys, your head of sales, your EVP of sales or whatnot, the next promotion for that person used to be CEO, right? You're a people person, you're close to sales, you're close to making money, you're the rainmaker. But now what's happening is CFOs are being dubbed to become CEOs. Or in Amazon's case, the head of a product division ended up being dubbed as the next CEO, right? So the financial analyst track that I was showing here, that's the CFO track, right? So you start as an analyst, hopefully you join a big company. GE Capital used to be really good at this, where they would churn out the next big superstars over the course of, they did it for 2 decades for a while. I'll pause here for a second. Any questions so far? All right, keep going. So what do? So I came up in the financial analyst track, right? But as Ken said, I'm a relatively recent graduate. I went to UMass Lowell. So right, why listen to me? And if anyone even remembers, what even is my name, right? So I graduated BS Finance from UMass Lowell, went to Syracuse to get my MBA. So my company, Digital.ai, I was actually part of the TPG group, right? So we have a dotted line to them because we're operators for them. So TPG, the PE firm, is one of the top six biggest PE firms in the world. And then I was a Beta Gamma Sigma inductee in 2017. And again, just so people remember, my name is Mahadi, right? So why does it matter? Why did I put this slide up? One thing I've learned going through a lot of these presentations is credibility matters, right? Why is someone saying what they're saying, and why should you listen to them? And this is the best piece of advice I got coming out of college. And if you take nothing out of this presentation, take that. Is, kind of assess people's credibility, right? So if Dave Portnoy goes on CNBC and says, "Hey, is Warren Buffett really worth it?" Yeah, that's not an opinion that should hold the same weight as Warren's opinion, right? Because he's got credibility. He's done it for a long time. He has done other things recognized by peers. So what do? So I work inside this company as senior director of FP&A, right? Financial planning and analysis. What does that actually mean? I'm in charge of every single dollar that comes in. I'm in charge of every single dollar that goes out. And at the moment, that's currently my team, right? So as I said, it's the CFO track, right? So hopefully my next move is that next one. Sometimes that's the hardest hill to climb. So it's neither here nor there. But this, so this consultant 1, this consultant 2, they could literally be an analyst 1 and analyst 2, right? So you start your way up and you pick whatever track in there you want, right? So this is my cost track, this is my revenue track, this is my reporting track, right? And we kind of go up from any of those tracks to the next level, to the next level, to the next level, right? And each of those, you pick up a new skill, or pick up a new expertise, until you are able to craft a story around the entirety of your company. So I'll kind of quickly go through this, and we'll put these slides up, right, so you can see this. But my org basically owns it all, right? So every single piece of data that goes out of the company comes out of my desk, and every single piece of analysis, every single decision on what kind of investments we should make, what kind of investments we shouldn't make, are the investments we made working, right? And investments could be not just money investments, right? I mean, I guess they're all money investments, but if you're outsourcing a new vendor, right? If you're outsourcing a consulting model for customer success, if you're outsourcing a development model, if you're whatever decision you're making with your funds, right? You're making those on behalf of your investor group, but you're also making those on behalf of your employees. And every single one of those decisions and the evaluations for those decisions goes through my teams and my org. So what does all that mean, right? What is actually my job? And I'll skip through this because there's a lot of writing, but you obviously have access to the PowerPoint and add me on LinkedIn. And I tell my team this all the time. My job and our job on my team is to tell a story, right? You take all the data from all different points of view, right? So revenue data or cost data or analytical data or currency fluctuations, right? So the euro, for example, started at 1.15 at the beginning of this year and ended last month at 0.97. In actual terms, that means that every single dollar that I'm getting from one of my European customers is now worth that much less, or every single euro I'm getting from them is now worth that much less, right? And, if you like watches, Rolex figured this out recently, and they're increasing their prices by 15%, because that is what you've lost, right? Apple is now saying, hey, your apps in Europe are going to be 5 to 10% more. Because you're literally losing money, right? Because you report everything in USD to the street. And if you're counting on that conversion rate that you had at the end of last year, and now that conversion rate's in the toilet, you're literally losing 16 to 17% just off the top, even if the same number of customers bought the same number of things. But those are cool things, right? But how do you take that data and tell a good story around it? How do I take that piece of little information and present it to 70 students who may not even know that FX is changing and what even is FX? So that essentially is what my job is. Now it involves a little bit of math, it involves making a couple PowerPoints, gotta be a little bit of Excel, but basically you have to be a good storyteller, right? And I think Katie, the person that went before me, said, we write emails in English. Right? That's it. You have to be a good communicator. No matter whatever job you do, right? You have to be a good communicator. And the best communicators end up rising really, really fast. So am I in PE or am I working in the financial analyst group? What do I do? Generally, when a private equity company buys out a company, or typically they buy 4 or 5 companies and combine them, which is what my company is basically, they hire people like me, or they bring in people like me to build out the finance organization, right? And do reporting and do analysis in the way that they're accustomed to, because that's every piece of work that I do with them in mind, and not just sort of going through the motion for my CEO or my immediate boss, right? Now, obviously you have to take those people into account, but my training is to build things in a way that the investors understand. So once we do well enough here, we get this 5 companies that are now one company into a good shape that we can spin it off and sell. I'll go to another company that TPG owns, and I'll do it all over again, theoretically, unless someone else makes me CFO first. And that's basically why, it's a bit confusing as to whether I'm in private equity or whether I'm in corporate finance. But my bread and butter has always been corporate finance. That's how I've come up. That's what I went to school for, both undergrad and grad school. And this was just a nice little pivot that I got introduced to work as part of a PE. How do you get started? And what track should you pick as you start going into your career, right? As you start to come get close to graduate. Again, just borrowing off of, the speaker prior to me, right? Internships help, right? I know when I went to UMass Lowell, we didn't have access to that many internships. So what do you do if you don't have access to internships? Your first, second, almost third job, depending on how long you stay at each one, are quasi internships, right? You're not doing enough that if you say, hey, this isn't for me, I want to leave, that you're going to break the entire company, right? You're being brought in at an entry level or mid-entry level for you to learn and see if you like it or not. And there's nothing wrong with kind of going through and trying things out and seeing if you like them or not, right? My first internship was at Putnam. As soon as that internship was over, I was like, I'm never doing that ever. I don't want to work in financial services. I hate it. Not for me. My first real job was in accounting because the world fell apart when I graduated in 2009. And accounting is great. You learn a lot, right? But accounting was more so a study of the past, right? And that wasn't for me. I like talking. I like being around people. And most accountants, they want you in the back room with, your pocket square and that wasn't me. So, part of it is figuring out what you do like and what you don't like. And this is the oldest cliche. And I know as you're going through your initial job search and so on and so forth, you'll hear this a lot from people that have made it and that are in a good spot, do what you love. I will echo this forever and ever and ever, right? I will work for free at my craft. I love this subject. I've always loved this subject, and Ken, can speak to this. And this was, I talked to him about finance when I joined their board when I was 21, and I barely knew anything. I just liked the subject. I genuinely like the subject. I've always liked the subject, and I've always stayed in the subject, right? And this is something that I just taught at Syracuse a couple weekends ago, and I said this to them: passion plays and passion pays, right? Money will follow. Money always follows, right? But money doesn't follow somebody who just kind of looks at a gig as like, hey, this is my 9 to 5. Right. And it could be, and maybe you have different passions, and that's cool too. But if you're going to spend a ton of time at work, right, pick something that you enjoy. You enjoy the subject. And that's sometimes hard, right? Because you might enjoy the subject, but you might be in the wrong organization. And that's okay too. Quit. I've never understood the idea of being miserable doing your craft. Right, it is a craft. It is, I took martial arts for a long time, and they used to say samurai used to wake up every morning and be very disciplined about what it is that they do. They wake up and they follow the process because they loved their craft. It was a craft for them. That's what I look at my job as. I enjoy this. I learn things on the fly. I learn things on my own. I learned how to code on my own for finance. I genuinely love this subject, and that helps. And as far as money, passion plays and passion pays. My first job, because the world fell apart, I was making $33,000 a year. I make 10x that today, and not because I'm 10 times smarter. It's just I enjoy this subject. I've always been around this, right? And I still work with tons of startups, right? Just because they need help or I have the bandwidth, and because I don't have other hobbies. I tried to play the piano, it didn't work out. right? But every time I haven't gotten paid or whatnot, you learn a different way to write a problem statement. That's worth it too, right? And I genuinely believe, right? And this, I tell this to my team all the time. If something is going out of my desk, it cannot be mediocre. We're never going to be the team that says good enough, right? Just don't settle for that. And that goes back to the first point of passion plays, right? Do good work, and good work is always recognized, not necessarily monetarily, right? But people figure it out pretty quick. I was 26 when, people were like, hey, why don't we give it to the kid? Maybe he'll figure it out. And it was it's like, people notice, and you may not always get rewarded for it monetarily, but that notice and that affirmation is worth its weight in gold, because then you can go to the next interview and be confident when you're responding to questions of, hey, tell me a time something was challenging. Now you don't have to make up some lie of how you had a bad manager here, and you have a real problem that you really solved. You could sit in front of an interviewer and talk to them. And I cannot tell you the number of people I've hired that may or may not be good enough on a resume, but the passion comes through. You can tell that they're good at, they like doing it. You can teach anything as long as people are willing to learn and people like what it is that they're doing, right? And there's more here, obviously you can read this, but the last part I'll say is network. And this is my biggest pet peeve. I go to tons of networking events, and people approach networking events as if it's a buffet of business cards. And people, like, there's a pandemic out there. Like, let's be respectful. Let's not just dish out business cards. Let's not just try to hoard business cards like they're Pokemon cards, right? Networking is a lot more than that, right? Networking is just genuinely getting to know people that are in your field, or in your, if you're in the Cambridge area, just go sit at the symposium and look at, all the different young people trying to start new companies to change whatever the next thing is. You may get nothing out of it other than you meet cool people. That's cool. That's networking, right? You may meet people that are willing to share. Maybe they don't have a job for you, but maybe they're using a new piece of software like Adaptive, or like Salesforce, or like a NetSuite. I was using NetSuite in 2012 because some person at something was like, hey, you guys should try this out. Right? But now it's 2022 and everybody uses NetSuite. Yeah, but I got 10 years head start. Right? Hey, take networking as something more than, hey, I'm only going to do this when I need a job. Because I promise you this, I get hit up all the time. I do not respond to people that will only hit me up when they need a job. Because that's silly, right? Time is the only finite valuable thing we have. So you want to spend it with people that have similar interests to what you have. So take networking as that, and that, just get to know people, get to know what they do, get to know what problems they're solving. There's tons of them in the city.
Would you
For
agree,
everything.
Mahati, if I think you said that was your last point, we're running long on time. Would
Yeah, I'm all
would
done.
you agree that the most important question anyone can ever ask someone that's trying to achieve what somebody else has achieved is, what books are you reading?
Yeah, I was gonna write that in. I enjoy reading, but I was a terrible reader in undergrad and before, because it almost felt like a punishment. But somewhere, late 20s, and when I was at Syracuse, I started to fall in love with the idea of learning, and not just sort of doing it for the test, or not just doing it to slay a dragon almost, right? Like, I genuinely enjoyed the idea of learning, right? So I read Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, a very dry book, but much into my mid-30s. So reading is very cool. I like reading. I don't read enough anymore, thanks to baseball, but reading is great.
Any other
Read a lot.
questions from Mahati? I don't want to cut questions short, so we need to get on with questions. Anyone else?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Were you always interested in pursuing a career in finance, like even all throughout high school, like as a freshman?
Yeah, great question. No, so I lucked into taking accounting courses my sophomore year in college, so I was always in sort of this accounting finance track early on. My first semester at UMass Lowell, I was a civil engineer because I've always wanted to build bridges. And then there's a little project where you build a bridge with popsicle stick, and mine was the worst in the entire class. And as I said, and I'd really tried, and I was like, man, if I try and I'm this bad, I don't want to kill people. So I switched over into my next thing that I was good at.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. I'm paying attention. I'm paying attention to whose cameras are on, and I'm paying attention who's asking questions. So we have a couple more minutes of questions for Mahati.
Yeah, and they could be anything, right? You can ask me about what books I'm reading.
You made a great comment there about seeking your passion that you want to do. And don't feel like you have to stay in a position and learn it. If you don't like it, move to what you gravitate towards, something that you think will be your best. I've done that a number of times in my life, and I find I went to one position and I went back to the same position that I did before because I liked it and I knew how to do it.
And I can second
And
all
that's a
that.
good recommendation, I'm saying.
And you can
Yeah,
find
that-
that out, like Mahati said, through internships or just trial and error. If you don't like the job or the company, just get out. Mahati made some great points there.
Yeah. I went from a very high-paying job in Boston to teaching. We don't have to tell you how little that pays, especially when you're an adjunct faculty member. And I just immediately people saw my passion. That's how I got my job in Boston. The guy was like, "We can teach you how to write to the software, and teach is what you do. It's obvious you have a passion." And they hired me with a great salary. Then when I got laid off, I went into teaching at UMass Lowell, and I wasn't there very long. I got promoted immediately. I mean, when you have a passion, it shows.
Yeah, and it also doesn't feel like work sometimes, right? And don't get me wrong, like work is work, right? Stress is stress. Like I have a lot more gray hair than I probably should. But the stressful days, you don't keep count of them when you like what you're doing, right? The stressful days, you almost treat them as the aberration and not the norm, right? And if you don't like what you're doing, the stressful days become sort of all encompassing. That's all you remember. You don't ever remember anything good about what you do.
Right. Any further questions? I'm going to cut the questions off at this point and thank Mahati very much for being here with us. I hope you can stay till the end in case there are more questions or more advice that we need. And we're going to move on to our next 10-minute segment with Jason Burton in the manufacturing and planning line of supply chain. He is a production planning and strategic and supply chain manager at Excelis Technologies. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me okay? And can you see my slides?
Yes, these are now your slides. Mahati, you stopped sharing yours?
Yep.
Awesome. I can see them.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. Yeah, so my name's Jason Burton. Just like Ken and Katie that spoke before, I work at Excelis Technologies. A little bit about me. I got my bachelor's in business management at UMass Lowell back in 2002. I later went on to go back to UMass Lowell to get an MBA with a finance concentration. I learned from taking some time between graduating with my bachelor's and starting the MBA program, getting some experience in the workplace. I quickly found out that if I could speak finance, or at least make the people that work in the finance department think I could speak their lingo, it was definitely a skill set that was worth pursuing. So, for me, my passion is in supply chain, but I really enjoy being able to kind of relate with the numbers guys and help to, kind of strengthen the relationship between those two groups because we work closely together. I got my APIC CPIM certification back in 2014. I've been with Excelis for almost 19 years now in various roles. So I've heard a lot of talk about internships, and that's how I started at Excelis. I was going to UMass. I got an internship working in the afternoons there. I was doing, just basic things like managing spreadsheets, helping them collect data, putting PowerPoints together. But slowly I started learning the ropes and started learning, the vernacular and the language of supply chain, and it became something that I got interested in pretty quickly. I honestly don't know that I really ever heard the term supply chain, even through my, bachelor's degree. It was never really something that I considered or an area of expertise that I had interest in. But I think it's one of those things that a lot of people just find their way into it kind of by accident. They develop a passion for it, and they stick with it. So after that internship, when I graduated, I was able to take on a full-time role at Excelis as a buyer. I was buying, nuts, bolts, screws, MRO items, which is, off the shelf stuff, products that are used in the break room, et cetera. And I quickly caught the attention of the planning manager. We had implemented some new software that was called Kinaxis. It's an advanced planning system, and I had kind of taken on a special role in that project and leading the implementation from the supply chain side. And he ended up hiring me into his organization, and I started to move into the planning side of supply chain. I worked as a regional demand planner in aftermarket for several years, and basically what that was determining, what products we needed to stock in what parts of the world for our aftermarket service business. At the time, we had about 82 discrete stocking locations all over the world, and anywhere from 20 to $30 million in inventory, globally at any time just for service. After completing my MBA and getting that CPIM certification, it certainly made me more marketable. And while I didn't, thankfully didn't have to look outside of Excelis for opportunity, I think getting those certification, getting my MBA, it's definitely raised the stakes for me. And I think, as part of that, it kind of directly contributed to me getting a managerial role. So I took over as the manager of the demand planning for aftermarket for several years. And then in November of last year, I moved into a senior manager role managing the production control aspect of the manufacturing operation. So what is manufacturing and production control all about? The basic, one-page summary, I would say optimizing the efficiency of manufacturing output while working with many constraints. So basically, we're trying to ensure the flow of material to the manufacturing floor meets the master build plan while adhering, to the constraints that everybody deals with. We have space constraints, right? So, the amount of gold squares on the manufacturing floor that we can put our modules in, the amount of floor space that we have available, and the amount of warehouse space that we have available. Inventory constraints, shortages, obsolescence, non-conforming material. Shortages is probably the biggest driver of pain in most manufacturing companies right now. The pandemic completely upended, typical supply chains. We had a initiative to try to reduce our lead times on 95% of the components in our product to below 60 days before the pandemic. And we're seeing lead times of 270 to, 365 days on a regular basis now. Labor constraints, so direct labor, indirect labor, and overhead. And then factory constraints, right? Tooling, machinery, test equipment. There's only so much of all these resources that are all finite. And so really the role of the production planning or production control function is to optimize that flow so that we get the right stuff out on the floor, stuff that can be utilized, right? Nobody on the manufacturing floor wants to see material or kits that have shorts that can't be started or built. It's all just wasted space. And so basically, it's a constant challenge or a constant puzzle that we're trying to solve of what work do we start, what do we need to push through? How do we get the resources that we need? For anybody that's taken any classes through APICS, I just wanted to clarify that really the production control role is very much downstream of the sales and operations planning and the master scheduling function. So production planning drives the execution of production that was planned months or even years prior, depending on the industry. And sales and operations planning and master scheduling, they really lay the foundation for production planning by aligning the resources that we need at, a high level plan, a long-term, 1 to 2 year plan, and get the lines ready, get the supply chain ready, get material on order, and ensure we have the labor that we're going to need to execute the build plan that we've signed up for. One thing I also like to call out is that, really production planning, it's a service organization. So we don't directly add value to physical products. We're not touching the parts. We're not on the manufacturing line. So really we become a service organization that has to service internal customers, which includes manufacturing, finance, even my good friend Katie that you heard from before. One of the things I love about it is that it is extremely cross-functional. So, on a daily basis, me and my team, we interface closely with finance, procurement, manufacturing, logistics, sales, every day. So I always joke because my dad worked in semiconductor capital equipment, and he always told me, don't get a job in semiconductor capital equipment. And 19 years later, that's what I do. So just to give you an idea of the scale of what we do at Axcelis, so we build large machines called ion implanters that are used by computer chip manufacturers. So the likes of Samsung and Intel and SK Hynix, they buy our machines and use them in the process of making computer chips in their fabs. As you can see, just to give you like some scale, these orange, canisters over on the front here on those pedestals, that's about like the size of an average adult person. So, these things would take up, I don't know, maybe 1,000 square feet or more. There's about 5,000 unique components that we buy that go into every one of these machines. And I have the glorious task of trying to get them all in at the right time, out to the manufacturing floor, assembled into a machine and out to the customer. I just wanted to touch a little bit on our organization and how we're organized at Axcelis. So it's actually funny. I took this org chart from our company website, and the VP of supply chain's name is not Doug Mahoney. It's Doug Moran. Kenny, I think you might get an action out of that. But basically, so I reported into the director of aftermarket planning and production planning. So there's the production planning function that I run. There's the master scheduling function. And then there's the global aftermarket planning function that I had ran for a few years up until last November. And then over on the right, you can also see we have a Korea production planner. So last year, we opened our first offsite manufacturing facility in Korea, which is close to some of our key customers. And I actually had the opportunity to go out there and kind of get things running off the ground as far as implementing, MRP and getting everything up and running. That's really about it for what I had for slides, but I just want to, echo a couple things that I heard in here tonight. Really that, certifications, Apex, definitely for me, getting that CPIM was a huge accomplishment personally and professionally, and it's paid off handsomely. And second of all, I think is just that if you don't think supply chain's for you, you'd be surprised at how many things it touches. I think we've heard that with everybody's, statements tonight, is that it's never been more relevant. It's never been more at the center and the, kind of the front and center of conversation, especially when talking about business and business risk. And just, that if you think it's something that does interest you, reach out to somebody, get an internship, network, and hook up with good people like Ken Glasser, and they can get you connected to good people. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jason. Questions for Jason? You can stop sharing your screen now, and we can all
Sure.
see one another a little better.
I was wondering, you said you didn't really hadn't heard that much about supply chain in your college bachelor degree in college. So what what did you study in college that got you into the internship you first had at Excelis?
Yeah, so it was just business management, general management concentration that I was going for. And it was just really, responding to an ad. I just wanted to get involved somewhere. It was a company I was familiar with. I had known some people that worked there. And so, I just decided to apply and basically get my foot in the door. And things just kind of fell into place for me. So it wasn't really necessarily the supply chain internship that was attractive. It was just getting an internship in general. And it just happened to work out and be something that I ended up being passionate about.
Thank you.
Andy's really good at it, but let me tell you, he won't say that because he's modest, but he's really good at what he does.
Thank you, Ken.
And he started as an intern at Excelis years ago and totally impressed. So of course, Excelis groomed and tried to, you're coming if you graduate, right? You're coming. We're gonna get you. And we were lucky we got him. So.
I have a quick question. I guess it's for Jason or maybe even Ken. But Jason, yeah, you mentioned like the CPIM certification. And right now I'm studying for the CSCP certification from APIX, ASCM. I mean, could that still lead down maybe the same track that kind of you went down, or I don't know?
Yeah, I
it's
think
not-
so. I
Not
think
like pigeonholing myself, into
No,
a specific way.
I don't think so. Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know. When was the CSCP created?
Oh, off the top of my head, I can't remember. It was several years ago.
Was it like it wasn't more than 10 though, was it?
No, I don't think so.
No, okay, yeah. So I think when I first really started to think about doing it, CSCP wasn't even around yet. So it was really, I think they had CPM and CPIM. I took the CPIM because the inventory management side interests me as well. I may have gone, now if I was doing it all over, I may choose the CSCP just because I think supply chain, the name supply chain has become so much more visible, especially, since people started running out of toilet paper in the pandemic. And
Yeah, I guess maybe that follow-up question would be, is one more recognizable, I don't, or hold
yeah, I
more,
defer to
hold more
Ken.
weight?
I defer to Ken on that.
And when's toilet paper gonna drop in price? I don't know. I think I better have to, those ladies' presents, I can't say what I will have to do. I don't have to.
Well, fingers crossed, everything will drop in price soon. We need inflation to stop. And relate to what Jason was just saying, which one is more popular? It really depends. I found that some of the older managers really like that CPIM. They know what it is. They hire against it. Some of the younger and this is just a generalized statement, that's not always the case. And some of the younger managers like that CSCP. It's a little broader in scope. It's not as focused on inventory and production control and things like that. It really depends on what the boss is looking for. Both good.
Either is better than nothing.
Absolutely. Having those letters after your name, you put them on your resume, you put them on LinkedIn. It'll get you hired.
You talked about making sure you don't waste space. Place where I'm working now, it's just the opposite. They're trying to shrink the place down, and they got tons of open space, and they want to find a way where they can just keep from getting taxed on it. You find yourself anywhere in that situation, how you plan your space. It's I find that interesting. I don't know if anybody.
Yeah, so no, we've actually gone through all sorts of different iterations over the last couple of years, as Katie can attest to. We actually had space that was stockroom space, and we rented warehouses off-site and moved that out of the building and converted that stockroom space to additional manufacturing space. We moved our shipping department to make our receiving bigger, which Katie was a big fan of. So, I think, but the big thing now that we're doing, and I guess it's public information because there's a giant sign when you drive by the lot, but, we're building a whole new logistics center that we didn't buy the property, we're leasing it, but it's due to open, I think, in July of 2023. But we're basically, expanding. But at the same time, I guess it's hard to relate to, being stingy with space in some ways, because we're going from being 250 to 300 million back in 2019. And, our guidance for this year that we've published to the street is 875. And, they're talking about a $1.2 billion plan to investors, over the next couple of years. So we're scaling at such a high pace that we really do need the space. But it's definitely always contentious when there's multiple organizations that want to lay claim to that space.
Okay. I thank you all very much for your questions for Jason. I hope Jason will stay with us until the end as well, so that we can ask him more questions. And at this point, I'd like to move on to contracts as a line of work in this field. And that would be with Ken Glasser. And he's a global contracts manager at Excelis Technologies as well. Ken, you're on.
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me talk on this. I'll tell you how I got into contracts in a minute, but let me just tell you real quickly about me. I've been at Excelis for 22 years. I report to the VP of supply chain, but also dotted line to the legal because I deal with contracts. Manager of contracts, also covering offshore business process outsourcing contracts, when you offshore to India or China, certain services and things like that. I do those contracts. Software licensing and royalties I deal with, compliance team, and work with certain customer audits. Sometimes I get questions, sometimes Katie gets them. And also purchasing team, SharePoint, webmaster. So it's very varied. If there was something extra I could do to keep the job varied, I would say sure, because I don't want to just do one single thing all day long. 14 years at GE before that, I dealt with a lot of defense and things like that. And how did I get started? I started, like Katie had mentioned, I think she was the one who said started as a contractor. I started as a contractor. I was chasing parts that were late. Are you kidding? It was super boring, but I got it done and they liked it. So they said, you want to try being a buyer? I said, sure. And I just kept buying parts over and over again. And I'm like, it's got to be a better way than buying a part and then 3 weeks later buying it again and buying it again. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So when I got in, I started grouping parts together that were repetitive parts, POs that I kept placing over and over again. And I said, I'll put them together, see if I can get some cost savings, because I'm putting all these different part numbers together and putting all these multiple purchases over, a few weeks into a few years, or at least a year. And what can I get for a price? And the price always came down, and I was guaranteeing the supplier some business, and they were happy. I was happy, and my boss was happy because I was saving money. And that, little did I know, was my first starting in contracts. And they said, hey, you got to do a few more of these. And I'm like, sure. And other buyers at the time when I was at GE would say, no, you don't want to do that. You're going to make your job go away. You got to, they rate you on placing POs and how many did you place? And, you've heard the saying metrics drive action. Well, I thought that was ridiculous. I wanted to move up in the strategic world and not do tactical stuff over and over again. So I kept grouping, and eventually I ended up doing all contracts. So I thought it was a great way to get started on that stuff. I'm also on the ASCM Massachusetts Minuteman Board of Directors. I just inherited president. Good Lord. And it's really great though for networking and benchmarking with industry peers. It's a great way to also help the next generation of supply chain practitioners get up to speed. All of the students and people like you. I started out the same way. I would go to all of these APICS meetings and ASCM meetings and also the ISM meetings, and I would hear from the best speakers, and I'd benchmark, and I would learn and hear things that would help me if I had an interview or something that would help out, for the company and for the future. So it's a great way to benchmark. Anyway, I'm also the chair of the New England Supply Chain Conference, NESCON. I'm in the New England Supply Chain Hall of Fame and Harry J. Graham Award winner for ISM, which is ISM Greater Boston's highest award. So that was about me. So what is a contracts manager? So there's a lot of negotiations and paperwork to do, and I'll talk about more about that in a sec. But it's I deal with not just the business, and so I used to deal with just the business supply chain side of things, and then I'd go to legal for all the indemnification and all the legal stuff. When our legal person who worked for the top legal person quit in 2007, they said, you can do that too. You've been doing it for 7 years. You can do the legal part. Just come to me if you have any issues. So I handle both sides now, legal and business side, on the contracts. It's strategic work. It's not just repetitive work of placing purchase order and buying this over and over again, or chasing pot. It's more strategic, and I find it's what I like to do, at least. You know, you have to do what you like Mahadi said, or don't do it. You get to work with multiple areas of the business, engineering, and multiple areas of the business. You're not stuck in a silo. You get to work with multiple suppliers also. So you're not, it's a very varied day for sure. Every day is different. You'll have a large impact on your company's bottom line, which leads to you will get high visibility within your company, good or bad. So if you do well, they will love you and you'll keep getting more and more harder stuff to do. CFO has to sign off on a lot of contracts. So you deal with very higher level people in the company. You work with domestic and international suppliers, so it often involves travel. For example, I've been to India 8 times so far. I just went in July. In China once, and different parts of the country and globe. So if you like to travel, it's a nice section of supply chain to get into contracts. It's a unique skill set. Not everybody likes looking at, a 10-page or 50 or a 500-page contract. But you also have to negotiate that contract with your team. So, I have often said, when you feel social, I actually heard this from the head of legal, but what she was saying is, when you feel social, you can negotiate, work with suppliers and your customers, internal or external. When you need peace and quiet, you just go back to the paperwork and you deal with all the terms and conditions that you have to review and statement of work. So it's a neat way to do one or the other. You're not always stuck dealing with people and getting burned out, or just doing paperwork, which can get boring at times. You get a little of both. Why would a company want a contract? Well, clarity in a business relationship. You're nailing down the scope and the duties of the statement of work. What is it that you need that the supplier has to do, and how are you going to accept it or not accept it? Confidentiality, a non-disclosure agreement, payment terms you're going to nail down, delivery terms, export controls, effective date, when the contracts start, when does it end, warranty and remedies. Things cover a lot of things. This is just a partial list of things you're covering for your company, but there's a lot of things you want to nail down your company needs. You're going to have some risk mitigation proactively. You may have some incentives or penalties for good, or penalties for bad performance or lack of performance. You're going to protect the company's intellectual property, IP. That's critical. That is usually the secret sauce of a particular company. Minimize the liability. You want, obviously, cost savings, which I had mentioned earlier, how I started doing contracts. And then you can customize a contract as needed. Some of the bigger companies you work at, they have this template and you have to stick to that template. And no, customize the template so you get what you need for your company, and you also are getting what you need for the supplier. And I'll talk more about that in a sec. So I'll go through this quickly, but these are it's a lot of varied work, many different types of contracts. It's just a partial list. We do stocking agreements at Excelis, so the buyer can hold the liability or not, depending on the position. If it's a small supplier, will hold the liability. Otherwise, the supplier can hold the liability. They'll stock and bond the items for you right there. So if you have a stock out, when COVID hit, every supplier that had a stocking agreement had lots of stock on hand. Less shortages, less stockouts, better customer service. You can reduce the lead time. If they have it on hand, why do you have a 16-week lead time anymore? It could be 3 weeks. Great. What happens from 16 weeks to 3 weeks is you don't even see that you need it until 3 weeks before it's on hand. So that means you don't have all these reschedule messages back and forth from 16-week to week 3. Way less rescheduling. It reduces repeated over and over transactions. It reduces inventory at the buyer's location because the supplier's stocking it. Even if it's at Excelis liability, they're holding the inventory. So it's not on our books yet. It's just a liability. And improve storage and facilities and cash flow. It's just a better way to go. There's better pricing, usually bulk savings when grouping parts and guaranteeing business to a spike, guaranteeing business, a whole bunch of business to a supplier. Get a price break. Requires regular reviews of the forecast. One key mistake contracts managers often do is do a contract and then do it with the commodity manager, and then they file it away. Okay, it's done. No, you have to review it quarterly or more often, depending on the commodity, to make sure that your forecast is up to date, your quantities, that your stocking are good. So regular review is required. You can also just do a pricing agreement. You're going to lock in the pricing for some longer term. You have predictable costs. You know what, it helps people in finance and budgeting when they're doing their projections for the next year as well. Some buyers prefer year-on-year price reductions. When I worked at GE, we did a lot of that. We want 6% year-on-year. Why? Well, the supplier is just getting into business with the supplier, and they're going to learn how to make your parts, and they're going to get better and better at it. We should get some advantage out of that too. And hopefully they'll be increased in quantity as they get better and better. So we asked for 6 or 8% year-on-year on a lot of stuff when I was at GE. Sometimes we do that at Excelis. It's a neat little trick to put in your contracts when needed. And then the exchange rate clauses can be added as well. And when we're dealing with offshore suppliers, as you know, the exchange rate, if you're dealing particularly with Europe and the euro, it's really advantageous for the US right now. So, you can really get some good savings from that. But remember, it's also can be a double-edged sword. If the exchange rate goes south, well, so do your savings. So we use this limited, but you can use it. Volume incentive agreement. Okay, so you can't get the supplier to stock. It's a horrible supply chain situation right now. It's a mess. They're not going to stock. They can't get parts, but they'll at least hold the prices for you, the pricing agreement. And okay, we give you X dollars per year business. I want a certain rebate if we pass that threshold. And if we pass the next threshold, I want another rebate. So you can do that. There's different levels of rebate you can get on a volume incentive agreement, but it works well when you can't get the other kinds of agreements done. How about an exclusivity agreement? Okay, you have some newer technology and the buyer's trying to get certain exclusivity on technology they designed and someone else is manufacturing for them. So you could get some exclusivity for some time or period, or you might also do exclusivity to protect aftermarket sales to a buyer's customer. We have a supplier making something that our customer also wants. Well, you could say you have to sell it. If you sell it to the customer, you have to go through us because we're the ones giving you the business and getting you connected with the customer. So that's important. And then the last big one here is the joint development agreement. When a buyer pays a supplier to work with them to develop something, the underlying premise is basically that the buyer owns the tech they bring to the table. Supplier owns the tech they bring to the table, but the tech that's jointly developed that the buyer's paying for should be owned by the buyer because they're paying for that development. So that's where a joint development agreement comes up. And our engineering does it all the time. And dealing with offshore, there's also the master services agreement, supplier partner agreement, where you define all aspects of. You can do this internal, not just offshore, you could do it onshore. You're just defining everything about the relationship. What are the payment terms, warranty, et cetera, et cetera. It's a great way to define all of the things that are important to you in your relationship with that supplier. Attaching to that, you could have a statement of work, which defines all aspects of, we have a particular project that we just did this contract with you, offshore supplier, and here's the project we want you to get started on. It talks about what do we need, Excelis, the objective, what's the scope of the work, what's the timeline, and then what are the dates? You always want to have a milestone date next to the major project deliverable, so they have a goal and a schedule to live to. And clear performance metrics, acceptance criteria. You need to say, the supplier could say, oh, I'm done. And you're going to say like, no, you didn't finish. You have to be clear in your statement of work, what you are looking for and what your acceptance criteria is. That's important. And then the two types of those contracts, one's a fixed price project, $300,000 will get this done for you. Okay, that's great. If they finish early, they still get paid $300K. If they don't finish on time and it's going to cost them more than $300K, their problem, not yours. So it's risk for both sides, but that is often a good thing if you have a fixed budget. You say, hey, fixed price project, let's do it. Or it could be time and materials. You don't know exactly what the scope's going to be. It's going to change. Say, all right, here's the dollars per hour. We'll pay you this per hour. And will evaluate the project each week or month. So that's time and materials. That's pretty good. And a lot of people will do an MSA for a project and not have an SOW to follow up with it. And I think that's just a recipe for failure. You have to define what you need once you figure out your main agreement. And then this is the last thing, the non-disclosure agreement protects your company's confidential info. Do that first before sharing any of the confidential info. Remember, quotes are confidential too. So if you're in sales and you're quoting a customer and you don't have an NDA with the customer, they could take that quote and go down the street to the competitor and say, hey, here's what Excelis is charging. You know, what are you going to do? Well, if you have an NDA, then you are protecting yourself with pricing as a salesperson too, never mind as a buyer. So you always want to do that no matter what. And we're doing that big time with our salespeople over here. So that's important. And I remember my old boss, George Carino, used to say all the time, study and research ahead of time. Never go into a contract negotiation unprepared. Know what you need, know what your supplier needs, and know the data behind it, whatever you're looking for. So when you do a contract, again, be sure to review it regularly with the supplier. It's not just done and on to the next and never review it. You can't do that. And also, we like to do an audit on site at the supplier once a year just to make sure the compliance is good, keep the parties engaged. Also, our travel opportunities if you like to travel. And you also want to, the other thing I remember seeing at an ISM meeting years ago, internal compliance is critical with a contract. So if you did an office supply contract with, let's say, WB Mason, and everyone keeps going to Staples and they're not buying from the contract, so that means you're not getting your dollars that were promised to the supplier. You're not getting your discounts. You're not getting the good pricing that they promised to you through the contract. Internal compliance is critical. So sometimes you have to work that out internally, and it has to be driven from the top. And
Thank you so much, Ken. We're running out of time.
yeah, well, I was gonna say the last thing is you don't have to be a lawyer to be a contracts manager. I'm not. Contracts manager often works with the lawyer, but you do not have to be a lawyer to do it. Well, that's it. Yeah.
Any questions for Ken this evening? Thank you so much, Ken. So much to share about contracts.
I know.
Any questions?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Yeah, you were talking about that sometime when you give a company a quote, they can go with your quotes to another company.
Yep.
And say, you know what, that's what they're asking for. What you're going to do about it? Now, does a company have the freedom to say we don't do price match?
Well, the other company could say that, but more importantly, you don't want your I mean, our competitor is really big. And they can take losses potentially that maybe we can't. So they may say, oh, you're charging 5 million, we'll do 4 or 5, 4,500,000. And you know that you don't want to be undercut with confidential info that you know, they use your own info against you. Never let that happen. That's why you need an NDA.
But now let me ask you, when it comes to when you working on a quote with a client, so isn't it that they have to know first before they make it official? Now, how can you guarantee that they are not going to use that information as you are negotiating with them to get what they want from a different company?
Well, if you have an NDA, then most reputable companies won't take that legal risk. They just won't, because it's not worth it. All right. I mean, you know, winning business and then getting indicted later is probably not a good thing.
Okay. No problem. Thank you so much for answering my question.
Happy to do so.
And thank you. And for those of you who want to ask more questions at the end, I'm sorry, but we're going to have to move this along because we have one more wonderful speaker, and that would be Brian Vargas, talking to us about master scheduling and planning. And he is a master planner, associate manager at Sikorsky. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Can everyone see and hear me okay?
Yes. Do you have slides that you'll be sharing?
No, I didn't prepare slides. I'm kind of jealous after seeing everyone else's slides. Look
That's
pretty
fine.
good. So, but no, we're just going to do a quick little talking points today, and then I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. So like Karen said, my name is Brian Vargas. I am the Master Scheduling Manager over at Sikorsky Aircraft. For those of you that don't know, they are a manufacturer of helicopters and are part of the Rotary Mission Systems pillar of Lockheed Martin, along with Missile and Fire Control. A little bit of a background around me. I graduated University of Connecticut in 2014 with a bachelor's in economics. I worked a few jobs before joining Sikorsky in 2017, and I've been fielding different roles within the company ever since. It was actually through Sikorsky that I obtained my APIX CPIM certification in 2020. It was a bit of a challenge trying to get those testing scheduled with the lockdown, but we managed to get through it, and I'm happy that I did. Big proponent of that one in particular. I'm currently enrolled in an MBA program over at Sacred Heart University, and I will be graduating in the fall of next year. So scheduling aircraft and other complex assemblies is a multifaceted process that requires attention to detail and high levels of accuracy. What we basically do drives all the material requirements in the material requirement planning process, which not only has substantial financial impacts, but also affects hundreds of other employees' jobs that revolve around the accuracy of material requirements planning. Master scheduling is a pivotal role in the company. You're going to be working with multiple people throughout the different corporate levels and structure, very high visibility. You're at the center, you're basically at the center of the business. Any major changes, any additions or reschedules or deletions to the product line, you're going to be the one implementing them. You're going to be the first one to know. So you'll have a general feel of the business and how your business is doing. We're not only responsible for creating routings, which basically instruct how to build the aircraft, but we're also responsible for scheduling these aircraft in a way that minimize production delays, as well as meeting customer delivery dates. Scheduling can be a challenging role. I mean, every scheduling request we comes across our team is slightly different in nature. It really requires you to sometimes think outside of the current way of doing business to really push yourself to find new solutions that solve your current issues. This can arise just because customer requirements are always changing. There's new business processes that are being adopted, manufacturing processes that change all the time. So it's very vital to be able to adapt your scheduling and also your scheduling processes to meet these challenges head on to remain successful and competitive. I will say for master scheduling, even though it could be challenging at times, it does keep the role interesting. It does keep it fresh. I've been in this role for a little over a year now, and I'm still learning new things every day. So if you're one that prefers their job to be, mentally challenging, stimulating, where you're constantly being thrown to new environments, I highly recommend it. Personally, it keeps me, entertained and occupied and passionate, as Mahati would have said. So as I mentioned earlier, I have a team of 2 employees. Their names are George and Ray, and together we're responsible primarily for creating and maintaining production schedules for all aircraft models across all of the new production facilities, be it US-based or outside international. This entails, working with different departments. We work with operations, supply chain, industrial engineering, production control. We work with many different groups to ensure that everyone is aligned to the schedule and that any scheduling conflicts or issues that could arise are mitigated well ahead of time. We also perform risk analyses. So whenever there's a potential change, whether we're adding aircraft or rescheduling aircraft or what have you, there is risk associated with it. So we basically perform analysis to say, hey, is this change feasible? Can we do this? Can we meet the customer requirements? So that involves, I believe Jason mentioned it earlier, Kinaxis, very popular simulation tool. We use it over here in Sikorsky. We utilize Kinaxis to perform these simulations to provide upper management, senior level management with the information that they need to make an educated decision on whether or not we should go forward with adding or removing or rescheduling product in the product schedules. As part of the master scheduling, we are part of demand management. So we play a key role in the sales, inventory, and operation planning process. We provide data as well as simulations for long range planning. With aircraft, it's not something you build in a month. So we're typically working out, quite a number of years into the future to plan aircraft. And when we're not doing any of the aforementioned activities, we're usually, troubleshooting material requirements, network requirements, ensuring accuracy of the master production schedule, working IT projects, continuous improvement in projects, and basically just helping out any of the internal customers we have with any of their day-to-day needs. To reiterate Jason's point earlier, certifications helped me tremendously in providing that foundational knowledge I needed to basically make the leap from material planning to being the scheduling manager for the entire company, essentially. I highly recommend CPIM for the certification in production inventory control management. It helped me quite a bit, and that's it for me. So I'll open the floor for any questions.
Brian, I'm going to ask you the first question.
Sure, Olivia, why not?
Olivia.
Hello. Brian's laughing right now because when Brian was hired, I was on that team.
Yes, she was.
So I'm about to challenge him. No, I'm kidding. I won't do that to you. But one thing that I guess you could answer is through master scheduling, how do you kind of pivot as times change? Like, does the schedule ever come in and you make it one way and then 6 months from now you have to pivot to a different area? Are you always changing the master schedule, or once you touch it, you're done?
No, customer requirements are always changing, Olivia. As you know, nothing really stays static for too long. That's what kind of makes the job more exciting. Sometimes depending on, part shortages or, how, aircraft are going to be built or where they're going to be built, or even if the customer, wants certain aircraft delivered ahead of other ones, we basically have to make amendments to the master schedule almost on a, I'd say weekly, probably monthly cadence, definitely touching different product lines. Every program wants something different. They're quite needy, I would say. So yeah, no, great question. We're constantly making amendments to the master schedule, and that's what really challenges us on the day-to-day to how to make the changes and have the least amount of reverberating impact to the rest of the company.
How much does earned value drive the master schedule?
Earned value, yeah, basically all of our aircraft are associated with earned value earned value projects, and that's how we report it out to our multiple customers. Basically every material requirement and labor hour that is accumulated on the aircraft is associated with a work breakdown structure charge number, and that basically allows for the dissemination of work between different required work centers and build stations. So it does get down to the nitty-gritty level of detail in terms of cost collections and so on and so forth.
And I think one thing to quickly add to that is, and Brian, you could attest to this, is sometimes in master scheduling, it isn't, as Brian said, you're looking at facilities everywhere. Brian works with facilities all over. And sometimes it's saying what's going on in Florida and what's going on in Connecticut and how those might play effect into each other's schedules as well.
Right, we do have, different product lines, and at one point, we could be working on something in a Connecticut-based facility, and that aircraft needs to be sent down to finish, in Florida or Pennsylvania or what have you. So you have to juggle a lot of different, facilities, and that just means you need to be in lockstep with, your production control personnel at the different facilities, different operations and industrial engineering, personnel to make sure that, what you're doing is feasible and there's no conflicts. Any other questions?
I'll ask one more if no one else is going to.
Okay.
Sure. How important is your interpersonal skills to the job? And because you're managing different aspects of the supply chain.
Right. I would say interpersonal skills are really important regardless of the position that you're in. Being able to effectively communicate, whether it be in person, in your business writing, et cetera, it really plays an important part. You need to be able to make connections, positive connections, because you need to rely on other people to provide you the information that you need to do your job. In master scheduling, you're taking in a lot of different elements and a lot of different, it's a very I'm trying to keep it at a 10,000 foot view, but it does get pretty intricate with the things that you need to keep track of. And sometimes that entails working with, program operations, working with finance, to basically get the information that you need to be able to do your job successfully. So I would highly recommend, networking, getting, working on your, interpersonal skills, relationships in the company. It's very important in my role. And I'm assuming it would also be relevant in almost every other aspect of business. Thank you,
Okay.
Olivia. Good question.
You're
If there are no
welcome.
other student questions, we are now pretty much back to being on time. And I would like to turn this over to our regular general questions for all of our speakers this evening. Are there any further questions for Katie? Mahati had to drop out. He needed to leave. There's Jason, Ken, Brian, Katie. They're all still with us. Any further questions?
May I ask a question?
Sure.
As someone that will have an MBA with a specialization in healthcare, how helpful this certification will be for me?
And are you one of our students, Ricardo?
Yeah, with the University of Massachusetts.
Lowell?
Yes.
Awesome. Welcome. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah. I want to find out how, that, all these certification for someone in the healthcare field, how helpful it's going to be,
Yeah.
I assume there's a lot of supply chain things that happen in that field as well.
So, okay.
Go ahead, Olivia.
No, I just know from my own personal experience having two parents in healthcare, especially during COVID. My parents who, don't have the supply chain background, you kind of, especially when COVID hit, whether you liked it or not, in healthcare, you jumped into that because how your surgeries are scheduled, how your patients are scheduled, what materials need to be in the facility for those things, you really learn at that moment in time, because if they're not there, then you can't have it. All these certifications, whether it's in supply chain or like HR, project management, they all give you the fundamentals in real life scenarios. So like CPIM it takes it a step farther than what you'll learn in the classroom. And while you're studying for it, it also gives you scenario based on when things could happen and how to handle them. And then when you go into the workplace, you have a more in-depth knowledge of how to handle those situations, because whether you're in supply chain in the healthcare field or you're dealing with patients every day, you kind of it's really important to know that more in-depth level. It also helps you with your salary. When you come in with more expertise, not for anything, it does give you a salary bump. And with your initial payment or, whatever your salary is, whether it's, I'm going to throw out a number, 50,000, or you come in with certifications and they have to offer you 55, any raise you get off after that is based off your initial hire payment. So, if you get a 5% raise every year and you started lower than you would have started if you had a certification, or you never bump because you don't have those requirements, you're also not making the monetary means that you could be making.
So true.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Olivia, somebody had a question in the chat about, and I think this was for Jason, but I
Yes,
don't
and I
think
don't
he's on
see
right
her
now.
online anymore, and I believe the question was for Jason. But I don't
Olivia.
see Sarah.
Olivia might be able to answer it. I don't know what makes people want to get into internships. And they asked what his idea was going into the organization. Did he know it would lead to a permanent job? Olivia, you've done internships, right?
Yes, I've done a handful of them. Internships give you your foot in the door. They allow you to really see if what you're going for is what you want to do. I've been in many fields even now I still work in the supply chain area. When Brian came on, he was my boss. I worked on his team within Lockheed. I now oversee financial contracts for a different part of our business aspect. But I initially came in working professional sports. So the internships I had then allowed me to see how much I liked professional sports, which business segments of professional sports I wanted to work in. Maybe you don't like it as much than you initially thought. And it allows you to get the expertise, but also say, before you're in a job for 5 years, you know what, I don't like this, or I do like these areas, and here are the tools I can now apply or use when I walk in to the door for a full-time job. Because
Wow.
I will say, when I worked on Brian's team, there's definitely stuff that I took from my time there and working in master scheduling for helicopters, and I use in my financial aspects of naval contracts. You never know the tools you could pick up.
Well, Olivia worked for the Giants. She met most of them, including the guy who beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl.
You love to say that one.
Yeah, I wish I didn't have to, but it's true, sadly. Good stuff. Good stuff.
Yes. Any further questions for anyone on our panel this evening?
I've got one. My name is Brennan Cassidy, UMass Lowell student. I think this is going to be for Ken. You were involved with the contracting presentation, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm also in contracting right now, work heavily with finance and legal and operations. Now, I didn't quite catch it. Did you start as more on like the like associate level of contracting before becoming a contract manager, or did you go right into contract management?
No, I was an expediter, went to buyer, senior buyer, supervisor of MRO, and then contracts manager.
Okay. So as a contracts manager, just because right now I'm a senior associate level right now, what are kind of the differentiators that get you from the senior level to the management level, and kind of things from the operations management side of things that will help someone like me get to that level?
Well, if you want to get into the senior manager level, my opinion, at least at our company, is that you have to not only be able to do your job well and know the attention to detail, but also be willing to mentor the people you're working with. So if I'm dealing with a commodity manager or a buyer who says, I want to put this contract together and I got to get all these parts together, I will help train them so that they can learn how to do it, over time, maybe as well as I do. So maybe even better. You have to be willing to mentor, teach, just get them up to speed. You also have to be, separately from that, be willing to do the bigger contracts that would get you the visibility at the top, and they have to come out good, right? Because if they don't, then nobody's going to trust you with the next one, or you'll end up just keep working for somebody else who's really calling the shots. If you are willing to put together when I was just doing contracts, but I wasn't managing the contracts, I would still steer the team and say, well, this really seems to make sense, and this makes sense. And I think my wife or somebody said to me, he's not a contract manager because he likes contracts. It's just because he's a nitpicker. He's into the details and he likes to steer a project. So that's how I ended up getting into the contracts. But in terms of the management side, I would say it's more to deal with bigger projects, bigger contracts, good results, be able to mentor and train other people. So you don't keep all that knowledge to yourself. You're helping the company and as a management role even before you're a manager. And then they'll eventually make you a contracts manager.
Great. I appreciate the insight. Thank you.
Ken, would you like to talk about your survey at this point?
Yeah. So in the link in the chat window, I should say, there are two links, one for a survey and one for your CEU certificate. Go into the chat window, copy those links, save them on an email or somewhere, or you could just click them now and do them. But you want to get your certificate before we close the Zoom window. And we're going to stay on and chat till the last person's gone, but we just want to make sure that you get those links for the survey and for your CEU certificate to show you attended tonight. So that's in the chat window waiting for you. And the other thing is we're going to try to post we will likely post the presentations you saw tonight, at least the ones I have, on our ASCM Massachusetts Minuteman website, past presentations link, which I think I showed some of you guys at the beginning. So you'll be able to go back and look at them later if you choose. We'll probably post them as a PDF, I believe.
Also, guys, Lockheed Martin, Brian made me aware of this and I forgot to say it. Lockheed Martin is currently hiring interns and positions. Brian, are there any specific or just across the board?
Just across the board. Thanks for bringing it up, Olivia. Thought my time has sailed there, but yeah, again, if you have any interest in Lockheed Martin, Sikorsky, any other companies, I'll do my shameless plug here as my director would ask me to, but please visit our website. I mean, take a look around. If any of that interests you, you're able to apply within. We do interns throughout the year, a lot throughout the summer every year. So by all means, I implore you to take a look. Thank you.
Very good. This would bring us to our portion of the evening to reward all of our students who have kept their videos on and who have asked questions and participated. And out of the, I have 4 students who have asked questions, and I've put your name in a hat. And the one that came out was Ricardo Pierre. A $25 gift certificate goes to you. And out of all the other students who have attended and have been present and are willing to stay on and network with us to the bitter end, I am very proud of you, very pleased to have you with us. And the name that just came up was Kathleen Quinn.
Wow, thank you.
You're welcome.
I need the email addresses from both you guys in the chat window. We'll send an electronic gift certificate.
Very good. Okay, so for the rest of our evening, Ken and I will stay on the call, and as many of you as would like, please stay on the call as well. We are networking at this point. You feel free to leave us. Our session is over. We do want to remind you that our next virtual student night will be Wednesday evening, February 8th in 2023. And we'll be more focused at that point on career planning. And we will have a recruiter there who can talk to you about jobs as you are getting closer to graduation every day. I think that covers everything at this point. So please feel free to stay on and chat.
Yeah, thanks to our speakers. Thanks to Karen for a great job moderating. Awesome as always.